What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about how my 2024 gaming predictions panned out. Now, if you have no idea what I mean by that, because you subscribed sometime in the middle of the year, basically every January I like to make a few predictions about what might happen in gaming the upcoming year. And then, towards the end of the year, I'll go over those and just kind of see how they panned out, just as a little fun thing to do. Now, normally, this is the kind of thing I would save until like mid-November, December, but it sadly went so poorly this year I might as well go ahead and do it now because, frankly, I got all of them wrong. Which is probably somewhat deserved, as I think I got a little too cocky after last year where I got most of them correct. Though, in my defense, some of these are only wrong because their release dates got delayed into 2025, and thus they can't possibly happen in 2024. But we'll get into that. So let's start with the first prediction that I had made, which was that Baldur's Gate 3 would get some DLC of some sort or another. Now this one, I was kind of like half right on in the sense that they were in fact working on DLC for BG3 at one point, but ultimately decided nobody in the studio was particularly excited about it, so they simply canceled it and decided not to move forward with it. Now I will say, just to extrapolate upon that a little bit, I think it's unfortunate that we'll never know exactly what was planned here at the very least, and I hope one day in the future they give some interview where they briefly mention what this might have been about or something like that, because even though it's never going to see the light of day, I am genuinely curious to see what they had in mind here, though if I had to guess, probably something to do with Avernus. Nonetheless though, moving on to the next prediction, which was simply news about Fallout, or a Fallout title of some description. My reasoning being that so much money was spent from Microsoft to acquire that IP that sitting on it and doing nothing with it game-wise probably wasn't in the cards. And while, frankly, I am still of that mind, I doubt we're going to hear anything about it this year at this point. Given that Fallout Day is coming up and they're celebrating that, but they are already saying very clearly we're not announcing anything there. And while ultimately time will tell on this one, I would simply say that I just can't imagine there is no movement at all behind this behind the scenes. Because yeah, they're working on the next season of the TV show and everything, and I really enjoyed the show. It would be genuinely shocking to me to find out that they had no plans of trying to speed along the development of a proper Fallout title of some description, especially since we now know that Elder Scrolls 6 is in production following the release of Starfield, which means Bethesda Game Studios likely isn't going to get around to that for quite some time, at least in terms of Fallout 5. But all that to basically say, it's wild to me that we haven't even heard a rumor about what's going on there, though I certainly imagine they will share information on that when they are ready to, because again, it would be just insane to me if they weren't thinking up something. Now the next two entries on this prediction list are a little bit different in the sense that I wasn't so much as wrong, they've just become impossible due to delays. So I had a prediction where I said Bloodlines 2 was probably going to be fine, but people were going to hate the DLC in particular, which might very well be the case still, but while Bloodlines 2 was initially slated for late this year, it got pushed back to the first half of 2025 sometime, so they could focus on polishing and everything. And given that in interviews since then, even, Paradox has come out to have essentially grown very weary of the Bloodlines video game development, which is probably unsurprising, all things considered, but they've made it very clear they don't have any intentions on publishing one after this. But in any event, seeing how Bloodlines 2 was delayed out of 2024, not much to be done there. Which is a similar case for the next one, which was a prediction I made about Avowed. So my prediction for Avowed was that it would probably see a release not unlike The Outer Worlds. That is to say, it would do pretty well, but not exactly redefine gaming as we know it, but that ultimately I think the game will likely find a pretty dedicated audience amongst people like myself who are really excited for it due to its connection to the Pillars of Eternity universe. Though speaking for myself, it is in fact my most anticipated game personally. I would just be surprised if it reaches like complete critical acclaim or anything in terms of like Baldur's Gate 3 levels of success out of nowhere. But ultimately, we're going to have to wait a little longer to find out whether or not that could be the case, because this game also got delayed, specifically to February of next year. So ultimately, we won't have that long to wait and see on that one. But either way, I'm looking forward to jumping back into Aora for it. That does bring us to our final prediction that I also, of course, got wrong, but This one was for Game of the Year, or at least my personal Game of the Year. I could care less if it actually wins Game of the Year when it comes to these predictions. My original prediction for Game of the Year for 2024 was Dragon's Dogma 2. And if you happen to remember my review for that particular release, you likely know that I didn't love it, mostly because it seemed like a pared down version of the original game with a prettier coat of paint. The story was especially bad, and it really falls off a cliff after a certain point in the game where they do all this work setting it up, just to throw it all down the drain at the end, despite saying that this was the game they had wanted the first one to be, when realistically I think this game is less than the first one was. And maybe they'll turn that around, but we'll see. Now, I'm not the only person that felt that way. This game is, to this day, sitting on mixed reviews over on Steam. And while I wouldn't say I hated this title, I was very much so excited for it and looking forward to it because I played the original a whole bunch. Probably needless to say then, it's definitely not going to win my personal Game of the Year by any means, but more so I would be extremely surprised if it actually won Game of the Year at this point either, given its reception across the board. Now, as of right now, I'm not ready to revise that prediction or anything, as I still have a few games to review ultimately, but come December I will, as I normally do, or maybe towards the end of November even, talk about the best things I've personally played and how I would rank them, etc. I usually make a few different videos for that. And altogether, that puts me at 0 out of 5. So, if you'd like to see me be equally wrong about things, more than likely, next year as well, certainly subscribe and stick around, because come January, I'll make another predictions video for that year, where I throw stuff at a wall and then ultimately see what sticks. But for right now, if you yourself happen to have thought anything was going to happen this year in gaming that either did or didn't occur, certainly drop it down below in the comments section, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.